Hello, everyone. So today, the main discussion topic is about how to transform the social isolation into opportunity. Before that discussion, I would like to give there's some questions from the previous teaching. So I like to answer some of those. Of course, cannot answer all the questions. So some questions are here. I'm doing the meditation on thoughts, and sometimes I don't know which of my thoughts I can trust and which one I shouldn't. The more I do it, the less I really know who I am or what I really think or believe. What should I do? So normally, for the thought meditation is any kind of thought. You don't need to look for particular thought. You don't need to create any special thought. So just being, your job is just being. So maybe, okay, watch this here. So it's like this. So this is awareness example. Okay, awareness just be. So whatever watch goes, it just be, this way, okay, this way. The thought says blah blah yada yada. But not like this, this thought, that thought, whole. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do anything. So actually, doing versus being. So whatever thought comes, you just be. Sometimes thought cannot come. Thought will disappear. So this is the thought meditation. But of course, if you are new to meditation, first I recommend that to meditate on the breathing or sound or mental recitation about 1 month every day, at least 5 minutes. Then you will have the some experience with the meditation. Then you can watch the sensation in the body. I discussed about the sensation in the last video, right? And then you can watch thought also. So thought meaning whatever you are thinking, you just watch. The moment of you watch thought disappear, that will be the horizontal freedom. Or when you watch thought not disappear, thought is continued, that will be the vertical liberation. So vertical meaning thought is still there, but there is space. Space comes automatically, you and thought. But then there's another thing, what we call energy movement. So some people has energy movement like feeling something on the top of the head, like opening, closing. Heat comes from stomach, and the pressure from forehead, throat, heart center. There's some kind of tingling back of spine, like electric shock or up, or some vibration in the brain, in the middle of the body. So these are the sign of the kind of like energy movement. And then sometimes it appears some visions. You see something, hear something, smell something. Visions of flowers or enlightened beings or ghosts or mantras, music or special messages. And number 3 is sense of energy, positive energy and negative energy. Number 4 is the emotion up and down. So energy movement is normally what we call transforming in the body, prana, bindu, nadi, meaning the energy, cells, nerves, they are transforming from impure to pure good. But the important is don't care about, don't attach to that. So there's 4 things. 2 is real. Sense sign in the body is real. Emotion up and down is real. But the other 2, sensory perception, don't care. Treat as just like watching television. Enlightened being goes, don't care. Whatever message, don't care. Feeling, don't care. And do physical exercise. If you move a lot to strong, in front of other people. If you don't want to be like a strange person, then you can control. But if you're alone, you can automatically move, no problem. So for that case, sometimes a lot of thought comes, vision comes, feeling comes, and then you will wonder which one is true, what is not true. Actually, don't care about all this. So this is very important. And then another is, how can I more turn into myself during this period instead of continuously searching to have something to do? That I will tell you later more. Dear Rinpoche, I would like to share what has been most difficult for you on the path. What obstacles have you faced? For the path, for me, like one of the big obstacles is resistance, because when I was young, I had panic attacks. And all motivation why I learned meditation is try to fight with panic, try to get rid of my panic. Even though my father said I need to welcome my panic, I cannot really welcome from my heart. I'm just fake it, fake welcome. But even fake welcome helps a lot. And then until when I was 13 in the retreat, then I finally tried to accept the panic. So I think these are really, for 5 years, it really become difficult journey for my path. I live near a hospital in Spain. What is the best practice I can do for all the sick people in the hospital? So normally what we call, if you want to meditate, at the beginning, you can set the motivation. I'm going to practice, let's say, breathing meditation or sound meditation, sensation meditation, whatever meditation you do is want to benefit for your friends, family, people special sick, even die, and all beings to benefit for them. Therefore, I'm going to meditate. So that's the motivation. Then you can meditate, continue meditate. And end of meditation, what we call dedication. So you can dedicate the virtue of the meditation to people who sick, who are already have this coronavirus. So dedicate, especially if you have some friends, family members who are already sick, or even some of them pass away, you can dedicate for them and all beings, that may all beings are free from this suffering. May all beings are fully recognize their true nature and be happy and be free. So you can do dedication like that way. So then your meditation become benefit for you, for others, for everybody. Okay, so today the main topic is how to use this opportunity to kind of like turn inside of you, and actually there are really great things, great qualities, great discoveries that you can find within yourself, much more than outside. And these are actually really related with your life also, your future life benefit, future meaningful life, a successful life, peaceful life. So these are really important. So some people, they want to do retreat, and you cannot get a lot of day off, right? In America, one time people tell me that they have only 12 days off for 1 year. So I think many other countries similar. Then if they want to do more retreat, then they have to ask a lot of permissions, not easy to get. But now this is kind of like great opportunity one way. So maybe I will tell you what I'm doing now. I will share my live here. So now I'm doing kind of like retreat here, kind of loose retreat. So that's why I'm teaching online. Every day I do 4 sessions, but in between session, I'm reading the textbooks. I learn those what we call big 5 texts like Abhidharma, is like a study of the nature of reality, mind and matter, and the Madhyamaga, meaning the middle way, the view, the emptiness. Pranjaparamita is the stage of the meditation experiences, the path, and the logic, and the Vinaya. So we have these 5 main texts. I've been studied this long time back for 9 years. In 2000, I finished. Then after that, I went to teach meditation here and there, very, very busy. And then 2011, I went to retreat for 4.5 years. I didn't read those textbooks. And after I come back, I do retreat sometime, but I don't read textbooks. So now I'm reading all this. Wow, amazing. Lot of aha moments. Because I've been meditating since then, since 2000, continued meditating. And these meanings are still there with me. And at the same time, I taught meditation many places around the world. And also I have a lot of discussion with the scientists also. So now when I go back and read these books, there's a lot of things that click. And before, like for example, Abhidharma, oh, very dry, a lot of technical things. But now is not dry at all. There's a lot of things that relate with our mind, our body, the world. And special all these Abhidharma lay out to practice for meditation. And then a lot of things that what modern science says is just there in these books, 2,500 years old, So amazing. And then in between the session, I do also a lunch, gathering with my mom. My mom cooking food, very tasty, My brother nearby, he is just walking distance. He brought some food from his home. And after a few days later, I'm going to cook also. I cook in my retreat days. Now maybe forget and since I come back, I cook just one time. Or maybe 2 times, I think. So there's no particular style, no particular dish name for my cook. More like curry, whatever things they and put together. So let's see, will they be happy or not? And also now I'm planning vegetables in between session. In Nepal, during monsoon season, there's not so many vegetables can grow because of the soil wet and too much rain. So now I'm doing some kind of experiment to grow some vegetables, beans, corns. Beans grow during the monsoon season. And I plan some corns are coming, some vegetables coming like this big now. And then sometimes I do some education, like we have this abiding heart education. So I'm having the discussion and this development of the new curriculum. So discussion, those things. So every day is something new, exciting, something looking forward. So it's nice, very exciting. So I think we all do something like this. I think it's really important that to try to discover yourself and to learn about yourself and to grow also. You can meditate, you can reflect, you can do something. So there has to be balance. The question here is how much myself kind of like turn inward myself or to do something has to be balanced. I'm also doing some physical exercise, run around my small house. So sleeping, exercise, practice meditation, study, contemplating, and diet. So you have a lot of things that can do all these things. So when we look at the history, a lot of great discoveries are kind of like the person who has some moment of reflection time, moment of break, moment of resting, moment of the quiet. So in this case, there's a lot of discovery. I recently heard of that in the Europe. Last time there's a big pandemic came, and there's a famous scientist, I think Isaac Newton, were escaped from the pandemic, stay somewhere in the kind of like the social distance, and there's a great discovery that what he found from that pandemic, So therefore, these are really important to reflect and use this precious time to transform yourself, grow yourself, learn about yourself, about the others, about the nature of reality, and do some practice meditation, do some physical exercise also. And of course, I think many of you do cooking also, right? And end of the whatever your meditation and reflection, set the beginning of that, set the intention. End of that dedication, pray. People who sick, pray. Dedicate to people who pass away. Dedicate for the world peace. Dedicate that may this pandemic soon will end. Teach some new technique of meditation. So as I mentioned last time, the meditation normally we need to practice step by step. Sometimes what we call experiential lineage. Special this type of meditation is what we call experiential lineage or style. Meaning first you receive some teaching and you apply in your life, and then you receive next teaching. So we need to do step by step. So normally I have this organization called Dergar, and in the Dergar we do those things like joy of living workshop, level 1, 2, 3, and then you have to do homework. So level 1 is about awareness, level 2 is about love and compassion, level 3 is about the wisdom. So like that, and then we have 5 levels of path of liberation. So total 8 levels, all this. So then you get really learn a lot and go deep into yourself, and then you will transform something. Of course, you cannot transform right away, but pretty much really get really benefit of these practices. So therefore today I would like to teach some new technique. So first, my video is main focus about the breathing meditation or sound or mental recitation, these practice. And the second, I teach a little bit about how to use emotion, the panic, as support with meditation. And for that, we did the sensation meditation, scanning our body from head to feet. So the panic has a lot of sensation. If you take the sensation away, there's no panic. If you take the image away, not easy to have panic. If you take the words away, not easy to have panic. If you take the belief or resist aversion away, no panic. So panic is 4 of these combined together and special lot of sensation. And this is not only panic, depression, low self-esteem, phobia, loneliness. Especially now we have a lot of many people might face a lot of loneliness, isn't it? And also thought. Thought has a lot of image and voice. Emotion has a lot of sensation. So then we watch, right? So do you remember about the true freedom, the horizontal freedom, and the vertical freedom? So I make this funny terminology so people easy to remember. So the vertical meaning, when you look at the sensation of the panic disappears, there's a gap. So great, there's a liberation for a few seconds, freedom for a few seconds, not very long. Again, panic come back. You look again, disappear. For some people, that's depend on the personality. You don't have choice. You cannot choose that I want to disappear or I don't want to disappear. There's true freedom, horizontal liberation. You are out of control. But the both is good. For some people, the sensation not disappear. Great. Now sensation become support for your meditation, just like breath. So when you watch breath, if you stop your breath, then how you can meditate on the breath, isn't it? For the breathing meditation, you need breath. So for the panic sensation meditation, panic meditation, you need panic. So when the panic comes, okay, you watch. But then when you watch, and then you're not in the panic. Panic is still there, but you're not in the panic. You're seeing the panic. So what we call, if you see the river, that means you're not in the river. You're out of river. But the river is there. Don't expect river go away. So this is a big confusion. Not normally, many people think freedom meaning this feeling of panic has to disappear. Not necessary. No need to disappear also, because panic can be support for your meditation, just like breath. So panic become your friend, your teacher, your support also. So not only panic, anxiety, depression, loss of esteem, loneliness, special like stress also. So all this can be used. Sometimes what I call inner recycle, panic, and loss of esteem, stress. Normally what we think is like garbage. But actually, if you use a support with meditation, they can become great support. Special, these strong emotions are very effective. Not so easy, of course. But even you can watch few seconds, it really improve your meditation. Yeah. So these two freedom, whatever comes is okay. So now today I would like to introduce the new meditation technique, what we call open awareness meditation. So third step. So this open awareness meditation, you don't need to have meditation object. So sometimes what we call objectless meditation. So normally what we have this awareness. So awareness is like lamp. So when there's a lamp, if you lit the lamp in the dark, then what happens? The lamp illuminate things around. So you can see things around the lamp. At the same time, the lamp illuminate itself. Lamp is the light. So you don't need to use flashlight to see the lamp, the flame, Flame is the light. So same way, our mind, the awareness, the consciousness has true, sometimes what we call true clarity or true luminosity, true aspect of luminosity, self-luminosity or illuminating others. So illuminate others meaning now you can see my hand, right? So mine is illuminating through the eyes. So you can see my hand. You can see my video. You can hear my voice. You can smell things, taste things, sensations, thought, emotions. And at the same time, mine is the luminosity. Mine is awareness. Mine is consciousness. Mine is clarity, just like lamp. So mine can know itself. So therefore, at the beginning, when we try to connect with our mind, we have to use object. Because normally, if someone asks you, what is your mind? You might say, oh, there's a feeling. My mind meaning thinking. Or my mind meaning feeling. Or what are feelings? Happy, not happy. What are the thinking? So you describe memory. You may describe perception. You may describe beliefs, right? But these are what we call mental discipline or mental activities, not the mind itself. So traditional example is sky and the cloud. The awareness or fundamental quality of your mind is like sky. Thought, feeling, perception, emotion is like cloud in the sky. Then that means panic is also cloud, maybe storm, Depression is like maybe hurricane or pollution. All these are just cloud. So they come in the sky, they remain in the sky, dissolve back to the sky. So we have this wonderful awareness. So this awareness is like sky, always free, always pure, always calm. Sky is always free, no matter how crazy weather is, no matter how pollution there's in the sky. But these pollution and weather cannot change the natural quality of the sky. Sky is always free. You cannot burn sky, you cannot shoot sky. It's free, pure, present, open. So same thing, our fundamental mind is like sky. The awareness is free. The thought, emotion, perception, memory cannot change awareness itself. Panic cannot change awareness itself. They come and go. So this is a great discovery, isn't it? We have this wonderful nature, sometimes what we call basic innate goodness. This awareness is wonderful. The gift is free, pure, present with us all the time. Not only that, we have love and compassion. We have wisdom. We have capacity. We have skills. All these are inside us. So when I was young, I began to learn meditation with my father, and I like to show off with my father. I want to see my father. Good boy. So every day we have lunch and dinner together. So one time my father was there, and this side is a big window. My father really liked to see sky, and I'm sitting, face to my father, and we have big window here, and we have the lunch. Lunch is finished, kind of quiet, not many people there. Then I try to meditate, pretend like this, and sometimes looking at my father. So then my father used to teach me about sometime meditation, teaching a little bit here and there after the meals. And one time my father said, while I'm meditating, there's a lot of dogs in the nunnery. My father was in the nunnery. Whenever new people came, all the dogs got down. And we look, my father said, hope this dog will not bite anybody. But then some new people came, and then my father said, the dogs has this basic innate goodness also. The nature of dog, nature of me, then there's one beautiful Buddha statue here, painting and statue. So nature of Buddha is same. I thought, maybe my nature and nature of dog might be same. But how come my nature and nature of Buddha is same? Oh, I think this is just my father tried to give me encouragement. I don't believe that I have this wonderful nature within myself. But then later I continue practice. There's a lot of discovery. Now I believe. So therefore, the awareness is a gift. And this awareness with us all the time. You don't have to make it. It's just there. What you have to do, you need to discover it. And how to discover at the beginning? We use object. So knowing the object, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. That's beginning to connect with awareness. And then awareness turn more inward. Sensation in the body, sensation in the body. So that is the also try to connect with awareness. So today, now awareness be with itself. So sky, be with itself. No need to have any support. So for this meditation, normally there's 2 steps. Maybe some of you already know about this. But normally I give 2 steps. The first is not the open awareness meditation, just preparation. So the first is just be, just relax. You don't have to meditate also. And if you know meditation, whatever, let go. Don't worry about meditation. And since you're not meditating, you don't have to worry about you're doing right or wrong. I will tell you more detail later. And second step is the open awareness meditation. Okay? We have 2 steps. So now first step is open awareness meditation. So, sorry. First step is not the open awareness meditation. So first step is just relax, just be. So that you don't have to meditate, thought come and go, doesn't matter. So how to do that? So we have the example, the traditional example is after the job, whatever you do, you finish your work, maybe around 5, 6 p.m. and you go to your home and rest on the nice sofa. Like that. That's all. Just rest, just be. Or you do physical exercise. Maybe you when you go to jogging and you jog for half hour. After finish that, like that, or anything else. Some people they say after the kids sleep. Some people say invite the friends and family having lunch or dinner party, and they're all very happy and went back and you wash all the dishes. Whew, after that you feel relaxed. Or after the exam, so many people say many different things. So now we will practice this. So how we do right now is we will use one deep breathing like this. So breathe from the nose and let go from your mouth. And rest with the in-between breath. Rest a little bit with the space in between breath like this. Few seconds. Then breathe in. Natural breath. Okay? So we will do this together, and this is not the meditation. Okay? So you don't have to worry about you are doing right or wrong. Just be, just rest. That's all. So first, everybody, keep your spine loosely straight and close your eyes and feel your body. And to be aware of any sensation in your body, you can scan from top of the head to your feet. And doesn't matter what kind of sensation, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, or no sensation is okay. You don't have to control anything. If control comes automatically, okay. Watch the control also. So anything's okay. Just being. Give permission to yourself. Be as it is. You don't have to act to be someone, or you don't need to pretend to be anybody. Just be yourself and be free. And this is also great kindness. You're really kind to yourself. Allow to be yourself is the great kind and compassion to yourself. Now you're going to have one deep breathing in. Now out. Rest. Okay, now natural breath and continue, just be. You don't have to do anything. If the doer comes automatically, allow that also. Don't worry about. Don't be afraid of doing right or wrong. Right is okay, wrong is okay. Everything is in the sky. Now we will do another deep breathing slowly. Rest. Now natural breath and continue, just be. Being is compassion. Being is giving permission to be yourself. Now last deep breathing. Slowly breathe in, okay? Be. Now natural breath and continue, just be. Okay, how was that? So this is the first step. It's very easy, right? You don't have to meditate, just breathe. That's all. Now, second step. Remember? So there's two steps. First is just relax, just be. And the second step is, remember, open awareness meditation, isn't it? So the open awareness meditation now is second step, and this is really great and very important. Normally, what I call this big secret here. So normally, I teach this big secret in the courses, in the workshop. But today, I'm going to share to everybody or not. This is really kind of like I'm debating myself. It's a big secret. So if I tell everybody, it's no longer secret, it's alive. The live, right? Live streaming. It's become public. Should I tell you or not? Okay, I will tell you. So the big secret is, and this big secret is about the open awareness meditation, the second step. So this second step, the open awareness meditation, is actually already done. Finish. You got it? The open awareness meditation is finished. Actually, you learn, you did it. Should I tell you more? Meaning, the first step is second step. Actually, there's no second step. So what we did now together, and that is the open awareness meditation. Very easy. So I didn't tell you that at the beginning, because if I tell you now we're going to practice this special meditation, open awareness, then there's sometimes we tight. Open awareness meditation. Am I doing right or wrong? Oh, this is very important. Third step. You know. So actually, you don't have to do anything. It's just ordinary. So what we call, you don't need to even meditate. So what we call non-meditation is the best meditation. The real meditation, you don't have to meditate. So then, what happened? There are three things here, what we call non-meditation, and not get lost, and uncontrite. Non-meditation meaning you don't need to do anything, right? Here, you just be with your own mind. Whatever your mind is, just be with it. And then Second, you are not meditating, but you're not get lost. There's sense of being, sense of presence, sense of resting. So everybody has little bit different flavor. Some people has feeling of being, some people has feeling of rest, some people have sense of a presence. So basically you're not lost. So maybe you might not understand what is the meaning of loss. I will give you one example. When you're lost, for example, when you read a book, at the beginning, you know what's in the book, Then you reach second page, third page, fourth page. So now you're lost. You have no idea what's in these second, third, fourth pages, right? And after a few minutes, what is in this book? That means you're lost. So when you're lost, there's no sense of being, sense of presentness, sense of relax. All are gone. You're become like a zombie, So that means you're lost. So don't get lost. The moment of you know you're lost, you're not lost. When you know you're lost, you're not lost. Or when you are checking, am I lost or not lost? That means you're not lost. If you're really lost, you don't know you're lost. So it's easy, isn't it? So don't get lost, but you don't need to meditate. And third is uncontrite, meaning natural. In Tibet, we have one special example. Be hairy as it is. So in Tibet, there's a yaks, Some people, they cut yak hair and paint like something in front of here on the horn, put some, ornaments around neck and ear, and put sometimes colors. So you cut the hair, paint them. Yeah. So sometimes what we call, don't cut the hair, don't change the color, leave it hairy as it is. So don't change yak's hair, don't cut, don't change color, leave it hairy as it is. So leave it your mind messy as it is. You don't have to do anything. All this are in the awareness. Awareness is like sky. No matter how much crazy cloud and pollution doesn't change the nature of sky. So don't worry, be brave. And give permission, be yourself. Just like this. Very easy. Then what happened? After a few minutes later, you will lose. The moment of you no loss, you're back. You feel like you're alive. You feel like you are wake up. And just be like that. And lost again. So this is open awareness meditation, or sometimes objectless meditation. This is very important aspect of meditation. So I hope you can practice for this week about this open awareness meditation. And when you rest in open awareness, whatever thought, emotion, let them come, let them go. They cannot harm, actually. And for your meditation, it's very easy. You don't have to do anything, just be. Okay? So then apply this meditation every day. Actually, you can meditate everywhere, anytime in your life. And we will have some other guides will guide you about how to apply this meditation in life. We have another live streams also from our teachers. So please join those and make useful of this precious time. Okay, so now there's some questions. My friend will give me some questions from this. I think it's online. Here are some questions starting. I know my anxiety and the depression is not me while practicing, but it is possible for these emotions to stop arising completely? Will it completely stop one day? Yeah, so if it has become very serious, I think you should take medication or take therapies, whatever benefit for you, you can do that. But if it's not really serious, you can work with that, you can transform. And another aspect is the physical exercise, aerobic exercise, very important also. So, but the one important is my problem also. I want to get rid of my panic. And later, as soon as I try to accept my panic, I want to learn how to live with my panic. Then even though I have all the symptoms, I feel quite happy. Before that, I think I'm having heart attack now, die now, cannot breathe, terrible. I feel like I'm in the aeroplane. When I was young, I hate flying, especially the flight go through the turbulence. I feel like I'm going to die. So I feel something when I have panic. But then later when I have these symptoms, quite happy, anxiety. So one time I met a person in California, Yosemite Park. So there's one person saw me, I'm wearing the robes. He said namaste because he came to Nepal to hike the Himalayan mountain. And I asked him, oh, you know namaste. Namaste meaning greeting in Nepali language. He said, yes, I went to Himalayan mountains. And I asked him, what are you doing here? He said, he's going to climb the rock, Hub Dome rock or something, big rock. It takes 7 days. And the week before, somebody died on the middle, halfway. So we have this news, and I asked him, it's very dangerous. You don't have fear? He said, yes, I have fear, but I love fear. I thought, I understand you. So sometimes the fear, anxiety is how we react to that, the relation. Of course, sometimes very strong fear, very severe. Of course, we have to do other practice. But then the medium, you can try to make friends. But of course, at the beginning, you cannot watch if it's very strong. Then watch your breath, physical exercise, and listen to sound, and mental recitation, and watch a little bit. It becomes bigger, change again, listen to sound, watch breath. Slowly, eventually, the panic really becomes support. Can you explain a little more about the waterfall experience? I think a lot of people struggle with this, and some more depth would be appreciated as it can directly be appealed. So waterfall experience meaning, so meditation stage, there are 3 stages normally what we call waterfall experience, river-like experience, lake experience. So 3 stages. So first waterfall experience meaning looks like getting worse. Some people, they meditate at the beginning, wow, getting worse now. I have more thought, more emotion than before. That's very good sign. What we call, when the river become muddy, you cannot see fish. When the river become clear, you will see a lot of fish. You might think, wow, before there's no fish, now a lot of fish, where they come from. But actually it's there. And another example is if the dirty cup is dry, it doesn't look bad. But if you want to clean, put some drop of water and try to rub the plate or cup, then all the dirty will come. First look like getting worse, but actually it's not getting worse. It's a process of cleaning. So same thing. So if you feel like you are getting worse, good sign. When I was young, my father told me, it's big relief. Wow, good sign. I'm getting worse. Woo-hoo. So waterfall is a lot of thought, emotion, feeling. Then sometimes become calm. Again, thought, emotion, like that. And the river-like experience meaning, then whenever you want to meditate, you can meditate. Still they're up and down, but there's some kind of continuity. And lay-like experiences, then you become a little bit master of your own mind. Sorry, now the past. Oh yeah. So, what is the something we can say or do for someone we are going to visit who are dying? I mean, For the dying, most important is if you're going to visit there, try to listen, try to be there. And if the person who knows about what we call bardo meditation meaning death and dying meditation, you can, if you're willing, you can discuss. But if not, you can do dedication, as I told you before. You can meditate and continue to dedicate that person, pray for that person. I think these are very important. It is okay to have a hope when hope itself is root of suffering. Of course, we can have hope. What we call all the desire is not bad. All the grasping is not bad. Like hope is a desire, is connected with ignorance, but good ignorance. So this question, when Buddha was in India, sometimes Buddha said, oh, everything emptiness. Don't grasp, don't attach. Sometimes Buddha said, you are the protection of yourself. Make effort, be diligent. And the student confused. Sometimes you say two things, And Buddha said, the student was farmer. And Buddha said, when you make farm, do you put fertilizer? The student said, yes. And what are the fertilizers? Cow dung and something from human's toilet. So these are dirty, but when you put into the field, in the farm, it can grow the greens. So same thing, like relative compassion, relative loving kindness. And the meditation shamatha also concept, but very good concept. And there's some effort to the meditation, great. Effort to develop love and compassion, great. Effort to help others, great. Social work, whatever you can do, great. So don't worry about those. And these are good. It's the unlimited result of vertical freedom. It is the ultimate result of the vertical freedom and the horizontal freedom, the same. Yeah, ultimate same. So what we call, there are two kinds of meditation. One is object-oriented, one is subject-oriented. So this is my tradition is subject-oriented. Subject meaning awareness is important. Objects are not important. So therefore, you can use anything as object of meditation. Or even there's no object, also okay. So horizontal, there's no object, gap, great. Vertical has object, great. So main thing is awareness. So eventually, sky is free. So awareness free, awareness is pure, awareness is present, isn't it? So that is the ultimate goal. So real happiness comes within yourself. Many people are having bad dreams during this quarantine time. Do you have any advice? Yeah, sometimes we may have a lot of dreams. You can do some dream meditation also. Try to have lucid dream, recognize your dream. So if you want to recognize your dream, then the bad dream is nightmare is very good, easy to recognize. So try to recognize your dream. Once you recognize your dream, you can fly. You can walk into the fire or water. So break the law of the dream, the first step. Yeah, so something like this. So now I will stop here. Thank you very much for all of you attending this, and see you in the next week.